Alex, happy belated summer solstice.
But yeah, that was yesterday.
It was yesterday. And it completely slipped my mind. Did you give our little intro on what to do while I turn my light on?
What to do? What do you mean what to do? So, like I said, welcome. This is Life, the Complete Story. I'm Alex. That is Tyler. We are your hosts for today. Before we begin, make sure you follow us on all of the streaming platforms. We're available on with Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartMusic. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Life the Complete Story, Life the Complete Story Podcast, one of those two, as well as you can send us an email at lifecompletestory@gmail.com for any of those real long form questions, comments, whatever it is you may have. Did I get it all, Tyler?
Yes, perfect. And
Fantastic.
we will start how we always do with our nature in the news. Alex found this article, and it is an awesome article because typically when you think of this, it seems to be a beneficial thing, but it's actually not in some areas, and that would be like a windbreak on the farm. So
Yes.
we're in semi-rural Pennsylvania, and it's kind of common around here, where farmers will plant a line of trees.
Or I'd say in our area, in a lot of cases, they just don't cut trees down.
Yeah, exactly. It's
But
more of a
they
leaving live
allow,
trees.
yeah, they allow a line of trees to remain, kind of helps block some of the wind for crops. And in this case, in an article coming from Hiroshima University in Japan, they actually did a study about planting trees in this sense to protect crops. They actually found that it can be, I don't want to say harmful, but I'll just read the article title to you and kind of the subtitle. So it says more trees can mean fewer birds. This new study shows that well-intentioned conservation measures can create unexpected winners and losers. So the biggest thing that this showed, of course, planting trees along kind of grassland, farmland areas, they found that can be an over 70% decrease in these grassland bird species. So these kind of open land birds, you see a major drop in their presence when you start planting like some of these border tree lines, because it then shrinks what is considered the open field or open grassland habitat for them, and then you start getting more like edge line species, which in a lot of cases can be predators. I know a lot of predators like to use the trees to kind of scope out these fields, and then they swoop in later
Right.
on.
This makes a lot of sense, though, Alex, if you think about it, because like when you think of a farm around our area, the farm is kind of like cleared out of a forest. So having that tree line kind of gives like almost like a nature highway to connect the parts of the forest between the farm. But in other places, like in Japan and other areas of Asia, where it's mostly grassland or wetland, and this is more of an artificial tree line, you're introducing new species that would really eliminate that biodiversity from like a wetland habitat. So
Yeah, I mean, this is something you don't just see in this case. This can happen naturally too, where say some grasslands that like forested edges can start to grow into grassland areas, or vice versa. You have kind of you could use in this case, we have grasslands that are kind of divided. Well, say you get a major storm, knocks a lot of these trees down. Now you have, for lack of a better way to put it, more grassland, and you lose that kind of edge line habitat. So it's one of those that there's really not a winner per se. There's definitely something is going to lose in the same case. I like the way they put it in the article. It shows that there's a clear ecological trade-off with this, but the researchers did not want this to be seen as something that is like beneficial or harmful in planting these trees. It just shows, the way they put it is, they wanted to highlight the importance of where and how trees are incorporated into agricultural landscapes. So it's kind of a way to show like us I don't say interfering, but doing different things for these different ecosystems, these different habitats. What we do can significantly impact something as you wouldn't even think. You'd think, oh, trees, birds like trees, we plant more of those. Well, not always. Some ground nesting species that prefer these more grassy areas don't always like the trees, because it allows more predators to come in, or other birds that like the trees will come and then outcompete the other species.
All right. Anything else to add, Al?
I do not. I think it's kind of a neat little article, just something that caught my attention.
Yeah, it kind of highlights the balance of like natural, like a artificial habitat of a farmland, and having that balance with like the more natural habitat, and not exactly overusing one or the other, I guess. But that's all we have for an intro into the news. We'll move on into our lesson for today. We are starting in Squamata. We talked about the Tuatara last week. Rhinocephalia would be your order with the Tuatara. It's not quite a lizard in the true definition, but Squamata is the largest order of reptiles containing snakes and lizards. Second largest order of vertebrates after percomorphs. Alex and I kind of had a little chat after our last episode off camera, and we're kind of griping about how long this was going to take us to record through, not realizing that this was the second largest order of vertebrates.
Yes.
They are distinguished mostly by their skin, bearing scales that periodically undergo molting. So, unlike every other reptile order, so the crocodiles don't exactly have like sheddable skin. They have like a
It's
hard,
more like,
leathery
yeah,
skin. And turtles have scutes and a shell, and that
yeah,
doesn't shed either.
no,
And the tuatara, I don't exactly. I think it has like a sheddable skin, but it differentiates from squamata in other ways.
yeah.
That is the most distinguishable characteristic. They also have movable quadrate bones, which isn't as noticeable in the lizards, but in the snakes, that's what allows them to kind of like unhinge their jaw and kind of like move their jaws separate from the rest of their cranium. They range in size from the dwarf gecko, measuring about 16 millimeters or a little bit more than half an inch, to the reticulated python, which is the largest reptile by length in the world, reaching 6.5 meters or 21 feet. And the extinct mosasaurs could reach 14 meters long, which would be upwards of 45 feet.
Yeah, that's like 50 foot. So that's like the size of a school bus.
Yeah. And you might remember the mosasaurus from like the Jurassic World movie. It's the one that kind of like jumps up out of the water and eats I think it's a deer or something. I don't.
Something big.
They utilize a variety of reproductive and mating techniques. Most often to sexual reproduction, but some species, most notably around us, it's the copperhead and the water moccasin, are able to do a kind of like facultative parthenogenesis, which is whenever the female can lay unfertilized eggs that still hatch into young, right? That sounds right. Tell me I'm wrong.
Sounds good to me.
It is believed many of these members are venomous in some capacity, and that venom is believed to have evolved one single time, since all lineages that bear venom share 9 common toxins in that cocktail. Snake venom was evolved. It's believed that the snake venom was evolved via a protein duplication selectively expressed in the venom glands. And that'll bring us to our first family of squamates. Alex, we are talking about Dibamidae.
Yes, let me snag a picture real quick before I start talking about these guys. So these are...
Before you start talking, let me kind of explain here. What makes these guys different from every other squamate we talk about is when you think of a squamate, they're called they have a bifurcated tongue, which means that's the forked tongue. So these guys don't do that. Okay.
Okay. So yeah, this is the family, right? Dibamidae. These are also known as the blind skinks. They are not snakes. They are skinks. They are characterized by an elongated cylindrical body and lack of limbs. They have the blunt head and tail, which is a little different because snakes have pointed tails. The females are entirely limbless, while the males will possess a flap-like kind of hind limb that is used to grip onto the female during the mating process. They lack external ears and have a greatly reduced eye. covered in scales, relatively small. They only reach about 10 inches in length, typically dark in color from a brown to a purple. You can see this one's kind of a brownish color. They are small insectivorous lizards. They are adapted to burrowing, so they burrow underground and probably eat like grubs and insect larvae. They will typically lay one egg that actually has a hard calcified shell, which is very different from most other reptiles that will lay a leathery shell. There are 2 genera made up of 23 species throughout Southeast Asia, Indonesia, the Philippines, and a monotypic genus Enelotropsis in Mexico. The other genus is Dibamis. Members of Dibamis are found in primary and secondary forests, while as Enelotropsis is found in drier environments. There are no members currently on the CITES listings. However, some of them from Dibamis are listed as either endangered or threatened by the IUCN. And the phylogenetics for this group place them at the most basal Squamate family, diverging most likely in the late Triassic nearly 210 million years ago.
Yeah, it's really all we had. I didn't want to jump off the deep end into like the next suborder.
Yeah,
because that would have been a long episode.
Yeah, once we start getting into things like snakes and all the lizards, like we said, this is the most diverse order of vertebrates, second largest order of vertebrates besides the percomorphs, which is the gigantic order of fish that we went through.
We did a super episode on that, and it took 3 hours.
Is that, or is that? I know insects was a 3-hour super episode. Was that one a super episode also?
It was a long episode. I know that. It was at least 2 hours.
I looked back at there's about 21 pages of notes, and you and I both know that the last page of all of our recurring segments is only about a half a page of notes.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that was probably a massive super episode.
Yeah. And that will move us to our recurring segments. First off, we have our amazing species. If you're new, amazing species is listed by the IUCN on the red list. I typically try to pick something that is threatened or higher on the scale. Today I chose the Saram blind skink. I don't have an image for this because this is a relatively new species. First identified in 2021. I think it wasn't published in any type of research journal until 2025. They are found in the north central portion of the island of Maluku, which is an island in the Indonesian archipelago. They are listed as vulnerable. Assessed in 2019, published in 2021, found at about 600 meters above sea level off the island of Saram.
That's I think the name of the island.
But it's at the island Saram, hence why it's the Saram blinds.
It may be like a cluster of islands might be Maluku.
I gotcha. Understood. This is a relatively new species. We don't have much in terms of like generational information or anything like that. It was listed as vulnerable because Saram, as a whole island, has less than 10,000 square kilometers. And its known range is about 700 square kilometers. So it's not so much the threats that are causing its IUCN red list rating. It's more its area of occurrence. Although they do have some threats, most of it being deforestation, like logging and things like that for palm oil plantations, which is going to be a common occurrence for a lot of things in Indonesia, Borneo, things like that. It does have an area called the Manusela National Park where it is protected. No logging, no plantations are allowed to be in that area. And I did have an article along with my IUCN red listing that basically explains. It's basically the researchers like request to have this established as a new species, and it goes over its length versus other species in the area and things of that nature, as well as other types of growth checks and location and things like that. Basically saying, hey, a taxonomic council, I don't know who actually does this, who accepts things as a new species, but can you please accept this as a new species? We've done enough research that says it is. So I thought that was cool. And I will pass it to
Yeah,
Alex because he's got a really
that's
cool
pretty neat.
most wanted for the week.
Yes, our most wanted for the week, I did pull in a snake. I already talked about the Burmese python, so we are going to talk today about the brown tree snake. The scientific name is Boiga irregularis. They are native to Australia, Indonesia, and Papua New Guinea, so kind of the Australia, parts of Polynesia. They were first detected in the island of Guam in the 1950s, most likely imported accidentally through cargo. The reason that they are a problem is because they prey on native lizards and birds, and they will actually climb on electrical wires and cause power outages. They're not established in the continental United States. They're typically just found in Guam, but let me find a little more information about the snake specifically, since we are going over this. See, most likely like those 1950s, kind of after World War II, during the occupation of Guam and those parts of Polynesia by the United States military. They are fairly slender, which helps with climbing, thus the brown tree snake. They can reach up to 2 meters in length, so about 7-ish feet. And there are 25 species within the same genus.
Saying there's
Yeah,
25
the
species
genus.
of brown tree snake?
Yeah. Typically nocturnal. They are mildly venomous. Typically not too much of a problem for humans. They are part of the subfamily Colubrinae, so they actually have rear fangs. So this is something we will get a little bit more into when we start talking about the snakes, the teeth, and how they are arranged and sizing. So that's kind of why their head is so much larger compared to the rest of their body. They typically reach maturity between 3 to 4 years. The females reaching it a little bit later than the males. But since it really doesn't have any predators in Guam, it can reach some of those higher end lengths, with the longest recorded one in Guam being measured at 3 meters or just under 10 feet. And they will have about between 4 to 12 eggs in a clutch, so they can reproduce and spread pretty quickly. And being a generalist feeder, they really do not, they're not very picky on what they eat, which is why they're such a problem.
Gotcha. Anything else to add, Alex?
No.
That'll, I guess, kick it back over to me for from the vault for the week. I kind of talked about it a little bit earlier in the episode, but we're going to talk about the mosasaur. They are a prehistoric squamate. Most often, well, not most often, typically always found in the ocean of the time.
Typically always.
Typically always.
Yeah.
They're very large, as Alex said, growing to a school bus lengths, feeding on fish and ammonites. Ammonites are prehistoric mollusks, even so far as to adapt specialized spherical teeth to crush the shells of the mollusk, while other genera, such as the genera Platycarpus or Dolosaurus, were a little bit smaller, ranging about 3 to 20 feet, fed on more piscivore than mollusk feeding. They were the apex predator of the Cretaceous in the oceans, specifically Mosasaurus hoffmanni, reaching 36 feet in length and over 3.5 tons in body mass. That's a hefty boy.
That is a hefty boy.
And we don't know much about their coverings, like how their scales worked, because as fossils, that's one of the harder things to get fossilized is is skin and soft tissue. So anything we would have is just like an imprint from what used to be a patch of mud or something more of a soft ground that was able to preserve the patterning of the scales or anything of that nature. That's really all I have is like a general overview of the mosasaur. The first mosasaur was found in 1764 in a limestone quarry in Mount St. Peter near Maastricht, Netherlands.
That I don't know.
Yes, Netherlands. And there were a couple genera, most notably, or the subfamilies would be Mosasaurinae, Russellosaurinae, and Halosaurinae. Really all I have for these guys, Alex. I'll kick it back to you for your ecology encyclopedia.
Yes, sir. So our ecology encyclopedia for this week, kind of simple, but one that, since we're getting into reptiles, and Tyler touched on it, especially with the squamates, is molting or shedding. So what this is, especially in reptiles, it is very pronounced. The shedding, they will typically shed the outer layer of scales all at once, as opposed to pretty much anything else that shed. Think of it similar to animals like shedding winter coats, like birds shedding their juvenile feathers for their adult feathers, where it happens pretty much all at one time. And what this does is a couple of things. One is, as the reptiles grow, the skin starts to get a little tight, so that those hard scales are then shed, and you have the scales underneath are softer for a time, so you get a little bit more space until the next shed. But the bigger thing is it helps kind of get a lot of the external problems off. So a lot of like exoparasites, as well as any sort of damage in the skin, is able to be repaired, and those exoparasites are able to be kind of shed off. So that way, kind of gives the reptile kind of a fresher start, is the easiest way to put it. And this is something that pretty much all, if not all, of the squamates do. And it doesn't hurt them. Like I said, it's like losing hair or like shedding dead skin cells is basically what it is. And in a lot of cases, they will actually, lizards are very prone to this. They will actually eat that dead skin as it comes off of them to get the nutrients from it back into their bodies. Like a
It's
lot of
actually
that
kind of more
keratin.
unhealthy for them not to shed their skin.
Yes, because you get the buildup of all the dead cells on the outside, as well as, like I said, all of the external factors that get on the body, and that kind of helps keep that off. And like I said, in some, when they shed their skin, it actually gives them a space to like I said, for damage. There are some squamates are actually able to completely regrow limbs, especially like tails. I think there's some geckos that are able to kind of shed their tails as a way to escape predators, and then it will regrow, and this kind of helps them, is part of the process of them regrowing those damaged limbs. But not a whole lot I had on this one. Just kind of a simple little tidbit of information that I figured would be kind of
awesome. Well, I guess that's all we have for this week's episode. We kind of gave you your first little insight on squamates. Gave your first family, the Dibamidae, which were those blind skinks. Make sure you guys to follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, iHeart Podcasts, Facebook. Send us an email, lifecompletestory@gmail.com for questions, comments, concerns, things that don't quite fit in the comment block, as well as subscribe to the website at lifecompletestory.riverside.com. That's all I have. Alex.
Sir. So, as we say at the end of every episode, keep on learning, learn something new. You'll never know what you find interesting. I've been Alex, and that's been Tyler. Thank you for joining us on another episode of Life the Complete Story, and we will see you next time.